You may have a seat. And as you're seated, I need to know, is there anyone excited to be at church today? I'd like to start off with a few shout-outs. First off, I want to welcome those who are in the military, both in the room and also watching our live stream. Will you help me welcome and thank our military today? Next, I want to give a shout-out to one of our owners. And at Next Level Church, we don't have members, we have owners. Members have rights, but owners have responsibilities. And last Sunday at 7-something in the morning, before any of our services started, I was sitting in my office doing last-minute prep for the sermon, and my office faces the main doors that you guys walk in, and I saw one of our owners take initiative and pulled out cleaner and started cleaning the doors to make sure there were no streaks on it so that it looked perfect for our first-time guests and for you. And no one asked her to do this. She just did it. She saw a need, and she met it, and I absolutely love that, and I want to give her a shout-out. Will you help me thank her? And one final shout-out, I want to give a shout-out to you guys. You guys have been doing an incredible job of attending consistently. And if you've been here the last few weeks, you notice this service has been pretty packed. And there's not a lot of room, and we've even been running out of room in our parking lot. And so I want to ask if you're able to attend one of our other 2 services. Not everyone can do that, but especially if you don't have little kids, the 8 a.m. service doesn't have childcare. That would be great. And there's a lot of space for you at 8 a.m. But also our 11 o'clock service, it has some room to grow too. We know, though, that first-time guests love this service, and so if you're an owner, we want to ask that if you would consider praying about and picking one of the other 2 services to make sure there's room for us to continue to reach people and to grow. But I want to thank you guys for being so faithful and attending. Would you guys give yourselves a hand? All right, today we're continuing our series, Heart for the House, and as a part of this series, we are taking up an offering, and that is happening next week, and you saw the video about that, and the challenge is to give above and beyond what we give and give an offering to God. And as a part of this series, what we're wanting to do is we want to help you learn what does it mean to have a heart for the house, because it's more than just an offering. This is really having a heart for God's bride. And so one of the things that we do at our church is every time we do a series, we pick a Bible study plan, a devotional, in an app called YouVersion. And if you have not already done this, the steps to follow along in YouVersion, they're going to be up there on the screen. But you can download this app. It'll be the Bible on your phone. If you don't want to download the app, you can also get there by visiting the website. But what we do is we pick a plan that goes with the series that we're in. And here's what I want to ask you to do. As we're going into the final week of this series, next week, I want to ask that all of you do this plan, especially if you're an owner here at Next Level Church. It's a 7-day plan, and it's just going to help you make sure your heart's at the right place and make sure that we understand what does it mean to have a heart for God's house. Well, last week we kicked off the series by looking at a passage from the Old Testament, and what we saw is that King David, he was the second king of Israel, and he had it in his mind to build God a house. And he goes before it to set out that plan, and we took some observations from last week. And so I just want to recap some of these observations for us. 4 observations about a heart for the house. Number 1, a heart for God has a heart for the house. I said this last week, but I think it's worth repeating. You can have a heart for the house and not have a heart for God. You can have a heart. You can love church. You can be a part of church and not have a heart for God. But you cannot have a heart for God and not have a heart for the house. The New Testament says that the house, the church, the universal church, not Next Level, the church all around the world, it is the bride of Christ. And so when you love Jesus, he's going to lead you to love his bride. Number 2, a heart for the house is more concerned with God's will than my will. This is really tough for us, especially for those of us that are control freaks, because we don't like to let go of control. But part of following God is saying, God, what is your will? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to plug in? How do you want me to build your church? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to use your gifts, my gifts and talents for you? Number 3, a heart for the house understands that God's plan for your life is better than your plan for your life. And what we saw last week is that King David said he had a heart to build God a house, and God said no. Now, a lot of us, if God tells us no, we get angry, we raise a fist, we're like, why, God? But David goes into a praise break, and he's so thankful. The reason is because David understands that God's plan is better than his plans. And that's something, if you're a follower of God, you need to understand that God does have plans for your life, and you should be moldable clay that says, hey, God, this is what I want to do, but is that what you want me to do? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to get involved? How do you want me to serve? What is your will for my life? Help me do it. And when God speaks, do it, even if you're scared. Number 4, a heart for the house wants to be blessed so that you can be a blessing. And I shared this last week. This is the hardest one for me. It feels very selfish to say, God, bless me. But as Christians, we don't stop at God bless me. We add on to that, bless me so that I can be a blessing to other people. God has given you a personality, and that personality is not just for you. It is to change the world. God wants to use what he's given you. You've been given gifts and talents that God gave you. He put inside of you so that you can make a difference for the world. And the things that you're good at are not just there to make you famous or make you feel good about yourself. God gave you those things so you can make a difference in the world. There's nothing wrong with us praying, God, would you give me good health? Why? Because I want to be a blessing to other people. And I can't serve God the best with all my heart and mind if I'm feeling sick. So I'm asking that you'd heal me in this so that I can be a blessing. Not just heal me just so I don't feel pain. Bless me so that I can be a blessing. It's okay to pray and say, God, hey, would you bless me with leadership opportunities? Would you bless me with influence? Not so that I become famous, so that I can make a difference for God. God, would you bless the hard work that I'm doing so that financially I can provide and make a difference in the world? Bless me so that I can be a blessing for others. If you missed last week, I want to highly encourage you to watch it on YouTube. You can find the sermon at Next Level Church 757, and we post it every single week. But I really highly encourage you, if you missed it for any reason, it's worth going and watching. Where we left off is King David wanted to build a house for God, and God says no. David responds to that no with a praise break, and he praises God, and then he has this bold prayer where he says, okay, God, I'm asking you to bless me so that I can be a blessing. We're going to continue on and pick up right after that. And today what I want to do is I want to give you 4 observations on how to prepare for a heart for the house. Once David has the vision, he then gets the people to prepare, and this is what they are going to do. This is how they're going to participate. And so I want to give you 4 observations, and we're going to do that by looking at our text, 1 Chronicles 28, verse 1. David summoned all the officials of Israel to assemble at Jerusalem, the officers over the tribes, the commanders of the divisions in the service of the king, the commanders of the thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of all the property and livestock belonging to the king and his sons, together with the palace officials, the warriors, and all the brave fighting men. So David has this vision. He understands now what he's going to do. He's got to raise the resources. He's got to collect everything and provide it so that his son can build the temple for God. And the first thing that he does is he gathers the people and he casts the vision. Now, I don't know if you paid attention to who was in the room, but when I look at the list of the people in the room, the ones that are commanders of the divisions, the commanders of thousands, the commanders of hundreds, the officials that are in charge of property and livestock, the palace officials, the warriors, and the fighting men, when I look at that list and see the people that are in the room, I immediately think that is a leadership nightmare. Like, imagine being the leader and you're standing in front of all these people that they all have an opinion and they're all really good at their job. And they are the top of the top. Like, when I look at that list, I'm like, there is way too many cooks in that kitchen. Like, how did they accomplish anything? But this is where we get our first observation of the day. How to prepare a heart for the house. Number 1, prepare by understanding the vision. Prepare by understanding the vision. I absolutely love being a pastor. I love it. I'm so thankful that God has called me to this. I'm so thankful that he's gifted me to do it. Not a day does not go by that I don't thank God that I get to be a pastor and use the gifts that he's given me. I absolutely love being a pastor. But I don't like everything that I have to do as a pastor. I love it, but there's some things I don't like. And one of the biggest things that I really just don't like is the leadership aspect that comes with being a pastor. And so when I read passages like this, and David's standing in front of leaders and he's casting vision, I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't like that. That doesn't sound fun. And I've been around great leaders in my life. I've been blessed to sit in rooms with incredible leaders and to be in round tables with leaders that were so influential and so amazing. And when they lead, I'm just in awe. Like, they have such confidence, and they're just like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take over a city. We're going to win this city for the lost. We're going to do, and they have this clear vision, and they just cast it. And I am not naturally gifted with that type of leadership. I have to work really hard at it. I have to read a lot of books and go to a lot of conferences, and I've hired a ministry coach to help me, because the natural way that I lead people is not with a lot of confidence. It's like, hey, guys, I don't know if you're doing anything, but if you'd like to change the world, no pressure. You can say no if you don't want to. We're going to try to win some people for Jesus, but if that's not your cup of tea, it's okay. And like, I don't have this like natural confidence. I've had to work really, really hard at it. And I remember when our church was really young, it was the first couple years, I tried to cast some vision to our church. And it's what I felt like our next step was. And the vision I felt came clearly from God. And the vision was to raise funds to build a new building. And at the same time, we want to be a church that plants other churches. Statistics show that more churches die than are born every single year. And so I want to raise up people and raise up leaders that we can send out and become new church plants. Our church is a church plant, and we didn't get a lot of support. So I want to be the example. I want to show, hey, this is what you can do. You don't have to fear it. You don't have to be competitive of it. We're going to send resources and people. That was the vision. We still haven't done it. When I cast the vision to our church, immediately some people got upset about it. And I didn't understand why. And they were influential people. They were people who were really involved, and they were people who gave a lot, and they were leaders. And I remember one of them asked me to go to breakfast, and so we went to Chick-fil-A, and I thought I was going there to help explain the vision and help answer any questions. And I did my best to cast a compelling vision and to explain why I think God's leading us to do this. And we get done with the breakfast, and he leans over and he says, well, that's just different than the vision that I had for our church. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that response. And so thankfully, this was right around the time that we had hired a ministry coach so that I could get help to figure out what to do. And I called my coach and I was like, I don't know what to do. He's mad and the people he's around are mad. And when I tried to cast a vision and let them know, I think this is what God wants us to do, he responded with saying, it's a different vision than what I have. And my ministry coach said to me, where there's more than one vision, there's division. And he said, I know this is hard for you to do, but as the shepherd of the church, you receive the vision from God, and you've got to lead it. Do not change the vision. Don't bend. Don't like go back on it. Cast the vision, hold strong to it, and just say, hey, this is what I feel like God's calling us to do. And lead with gentleness, lead with grace. I am called to be the lead shepherd, which means as a shepherd, I care about the flock, and I am the lead servant. I want to serve. I don't lead with an iron fist. I don't lead by yelling at you or screaming at you. But God has placed the responsibility of me, and the scriptures are clear that though not everyone should look to be a teacher or preacher in the Bible because they're held to a higher standard. And one of the reasons that they're held to a higher standard is because they're given the responsibility to lead the sheep. And it's not easy for me. And so I look at this passage, and I look at David casting this vision, and I think, well, you know what? It reminds me a lot about our church. Because when I look out and I see you, I see that we have some amazing leaders in the military, and you do lead thousands, and some of you do lead hundreds. We have amazing leaders in the shipyard, and you are great. You are high up. You've worked hard to get a high position. We have amazing leaders in the school system. I am so grateful. We've had school board members. We've had principals. I'm in awe at some of the leadership that we have that's leading in our schools all around Hampton Roads. We have some amazing leaders in the room. And some of you are way better at leading than I am. My wife is. She's a natural born leader. I don't think she's ever read a leadership book in her life. And she's better at it than I am. I have to work hard at it. But here's the point of this. If this is your church, if you are a part of this church and you are an owner, then we need to understand that part of my job is to get alone with God and say, God, you got to help us. You got to lead us. And what I do, and I pray this on a regular basis, God, would you kill any selfish ambition that I have? I don't want to lead people to build something that I want. I only want to lead them to build what you want. So would you give me a vision? Would you give me what to do? And then I cast it out to you. And so here's the mission of our church. The mission of our church does not change. It's love Jesus, love people, make a difference. The vision is how we accomplish that. And so the vision is constantly changing to equip us, to give us what we need to fulfill the mission that we have. And so for this Heart for the House offering, you heard the vision. The vision is we want to raise $30,000 to change some things, to fix some things, to be a blessing out in the community. That's the vision. Now, as the church, we have to respond and say, okay, I'm on board. I get it. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to ask how, God, do you want me to be a part of this vision that you've cast before our church? All right, let's keep going. 1 Chronicles 28, 2 through 3. King David rose to his feet and said, "Listen to me, my fellow Israelites, my people. I had it in my heart to build a house as a place of rest for the ark of the covenant of the Lord, for the footstool of our God, and I made plans to build it. But God said to me, 'You're not to build a house for my name because you are a warrior and have shed blood.'" So David recaps what we learned last week, but this time he gives us a little bit more information. And the new information that he gives us is that God says, you're not going to be the one that builds me a house because you have been a warrior. Well, why is David a warrior? Because God asked him to be a warrior. So now David's being punished for doing what God's called him to do. At least that's the way it feels like. And if I was David, I'd be like, what do you mean I can't build this? Like, I've served you. I've done what you wanted me to do, and now you're telling me I can't do this? But that's not what David does. David praises God, and this is why it's a great reminder to remember that God's plans are better than your plans. They're better. And you may have had specific plans for your life. You may still have plans for your life, but you need to hold them with an open hand and say, okay, God, what do you want from my life? What do you want me to do? All right, let's keep going. Skip down to verse 6. 1 Chronicles 28, 6 through 8. He said to me, "Solomon your son is the one who will build my house and my courts, for I have chosen him to be my son, and I will be his father. I will establish his kingdom forever if he is unswerving in carrying out my commands and laws, as is being done at this time. So now I charge you in the sight of all of Israel and of the assembly of the Lord and in the hearing of our God, be careful to follow all the commands of the Lord your God, that you may possess this good land, and pass it on as an inheritance to your descendants forever." So David gets before this group of leaders, and he casts the vision, and he says, hey, my son Solomon's going to be one that builds the temple. But here's the thing. He needs to be resourced. And so next week, we're going to look at this. David takes up an offering, and he does these things to build the resources to then hand it off to Solomon. But a part of this vision is, let's build something for the next generation. Let's leave an inheritance for the next generation. And that takes us to our second observation, how to prepare a heart for the house. Number 2, prepare for the next generation. Prepare for the next generation. As a church, what we do today impacts future generations. What we do, the way that we carry ourselves, it's why, as a church, we pivoted when we had these plans to build a new building and COVID hit and then costs skyrocketed and they came back and the project doubled. It's why we pivoted and changed our plan. Because what we don't want to do is take on so much debt that what we end up leaving for the next generation is the worry of paying off the house. We're very careful with the amount of debt we take in. We want to make sure that we can pay it off. Because here's the truth of the matter. I'm not going to be here forever. And you're not going to be here forever. So what we do doesn't just benefit us. We don't just make decisions for what feels good for us. We have in mind, okay, what we're doing, it's going to impact future generations. And it's why I want to work so hard to make sure that we have a financially responsible church, but also that we have a healthy church. When the next generation, it's time for them to step up and lead, I want them to take over a church that is healthy and knows how to get along and has unity and is working and headed in the same direction. It's one of the reasons why every year when we do Heart for the House, a part of that component is always for kids or students. Because we want to make sure that they have a church that they love being a part of, so they don't leave the church and abandon it, that they grow up in it and they absolutely love it. And then when they become of age, they're ready to lead. It's why we want to pour money into summer camp, because God uses summer camp every year to change teenagers' lives. And I want us to be a church that is constantly focused on the next generation. And that means sometimes we have to say, you know what? The things that I like, the preferences that I like, I may have to change them and let go of them because we want to do whatever we can to reach the next generation. And I'm so thankful that I grew up in churches that had that heart to reach teenagers. I remember when my family made the transition from public school to private Christian school, I was not anti-God at all, but I also wasn't like all gung-ho about it. And going from public school to private Christian school meant that all of a sudden, every single day, I got a lot of Jesus. And every day at school, you would pray before every class. We were forced to take a Bible class. Plus, there was a chapel once a week. Plus, every year, there was Spiritual Emphasis Week where you had chapel every single day. Plus, I went to church on Sunday. So when I became of age to go to youth group, I was like, I'm good. I've had a lot of Jesus. Like, I don't need any more Jesus on Wednesday night. And my friend invited me to go to the youth group, and I said yes. And I want to give you full disclosure why I said yes. His invitation did not include Jesus at all. He said, hey, would you like to come to our youth group? Every week there's pizza, we play basketball, and there's pretty girls. And I was like, yes, I'm there. He left out the fact that there is a Bible study and there's worship and there's other things going. I was just like, yeah, I'm there. Those things sound fun. I'll do that. I'll show up for that. So I'll never forget the very first Wednesday night that I showed up to the youth group. Me and him are running around the halls of the church. And out of nowhere, a little old lady from the church grabs my shirt from behind and yanks me to her. And she starts yelling at me. She's in my face, and she is yelling at me. And I don't know why she's mad. And she ends up saying something about my hat, and she yanks my hat off of my head. Now, to this day, my memory's a little fuzzy, but in my mind, this woman looked like this picture. And she was upset. She was big mad. And what ended up offending her was that I was wearing a hat in church. And apparently you're not supposed to wear a hat in the Lord's house. No one told me that. No one gave me the rules. I wasn't trying to be a rebel. I got invited. I was a guest, and I just showed up. So me and my friend, we took this to the youth pastor, and we were like, hey, this first-time guest just got yelled at by this senior lady in the church, and he didn't mean to. And I'm so thankful that the youth pastor brought it to the other staff, and then they brought it to the church, and they said to the church, hey, listen, I know that there's some things, you have some preferences, there's some traditions that you absolutely love. But if we want to reach the next generation, we've got to let go of some of the things that we love. We're not going to change the gospel. The gospel stays the same. We're not going to water down the gospel. We're going to preach the gospel. But there are some preferences that we've held on to that aren't even biblical, and we like them, and they make sense to us. But in order to reach the next generation, we have to let go of them. And that might mean we have to allow people to wear hats in church. And I'm so thankful that they made that decision, because that became my church. And it put in me a DNA that says, hey, I want to be a part of a church that doesn't just focus on us now, but has a mind and a heart for the next generation. What we do today, it impacts the future generation. And that means there's going to come a point, even though we're at a contemporary church, there's going to come a point where we're going to have to change some things in order to keep reaching teenagers and kids for Christ. And we've got to be willing to do that. Why? Because preparing a heart is preparing for the next generation. All right, let's keep going. 1 Chronicles 28, 9 through 10. And you, my son Solomon, acknowledge the God of your father and serve him with wholehearted devotion and with a willing mind. For the Lord searches every heart and understands every desire and every thought. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever. Consider now, the Lord has chosen you to build a house as his sanctuary. Be strong and do the work. So real quick, I want to give you an observation about this. There are two different things in here that are repeated throughout Scripture. And anytime you see something that is repeated by God, you need to understand that's important. It's important enough for him to mention it again. And in just a few seconds, we're going to see that God says again through David, be strong and do the work. So I'm not going to explain that now. That's coming. But something else that God says to David in this passage is if you seek him, God, he will be found in you. Now, the second part of that verse is not for us because it's with the Old Testament, the Old Covenant. And the Old Covenant was based on if you do your part for God and you seek God, then God will do his part for you. We now have a new covenant, and the new covenant is that we are saved by grace, and so there is nothing we can do to chase God away. We can't out-sin the grace of God. He loves us. He literally, we can't scare him away. But the first part of this verse is carried over to the New Testament, and we see it said, in fact, at least 30 times, but even more than 30 times. I just found 30 in my research where God says in the Bible, if you seek me, I will be found in you. And so that takes us to our next observation, how to prepare a heart for the house. Number 3, prepare by seeking God. Prepare by seeking God. One of the reasons that I absolutely love Heart for the House is because the challenge is so much bigger than just giving. In fact, I want to make sure that you guys hear this. I don't want you to give if it's just out of obligation or guilt or you're just like going through the motions. I don't want you to give next week. There's no judgment. We won't think less of it. Like, I literally, I don't want you to. This is not for you to feel guilty or for you to feel manipulated or burdened. The whole point of this is to get alone with God and to seek God. And that's what I want to challenge you to do. If we raise money but we don't get to experience the heart of God, we've missed it as a church. And the challenge here is to get alone with God, to get on your knees and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to participate? Is there anything in me you want to change? Is there anything in me you want to fix? Is there anything, God, would you speak to me? Create in me a clean heart, God. Would you speak to me? I want to seek you with all of my heart and trust that you will be found in me. All right, let's keep going. 1 Chronicles 28:20. David also said to Solomon, his son, be strong and courageous and do the work. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the temple of the Lord is finished. Okay, real quick. The underlined part on this, I almost made it as one of the observations, but I didn't have time. So I just want to quickly say to you that anytime you're following after God, it is a scary thing. And the message, this is not one of the points, it's just like a rabbit trail, but it's an important rabbit trail. The important message for you to understand is that following God is scary. If it wasn't scary, it wouldn't be called faith. If you want to walk on the water, you got to actually get out of the boat. That's scary. It's easy to stay in the boat, stay in our comfort zone, to do what feels comfortable. That's easy. But anytime God asks you to stretch, to do something that involves faith, it's scary. And so the message that God says over and over again is, hey, would you be courageous? Would you be strong? Don't let fear win. Follow after him and do whatever he tells you to do. And if you're scared, guess what? You're in good place, because that means you have faith. And God's going to walk with you through this. Okay, I don't have any more time. I got to keep going. Sorry. Let's read the verse again, because this is where we get the final observation. 1 Chronicles 28:20. David also said to Solomon his son, this is what we just read, be strong and courageous. But then this is the next part. And do the work. Would somebody say out loud on the count of three, do the work? 1, 2, 3. Do the work. Do the work. That takes us to our fourth and final observation, how to prepare a heart for the house. Number 4, prepare by doing the work. Doing the work. David and all these leaders in the room had to do a whole bunch of work to prepare a temple that they never even got to visit. Prepare by doing the work. Research shows that the average church has 80% of the work being done by 20% of the people. Research also shows, and this is not for our church, this is the church as a whole in America, research shows that the average American church has only reached 1/6 of its giving potential. That means most churches have 6 times the giving potential of what they actually produce. If every Christian who went to church gave faithfully and consistently, every church would be fully funded. There would be no building funds and there would be no debt. Missionaries would be funded to share the gospel around the world. And the homeless would be positively impacted, because statistics show that churches do more for the homeless than anyone else, if the church was fully funded. But it's not just about finances, it's also about doing the work. It's about serving. It's about being a part of the community. And the truth of the matter is, when you join a church, you are called to help do the work. You've got to help carry the load. Attenders just say, it's not my job. Someone else will fix that. But when you're an owner, you take on the responsibility that says, okay, I am the adult in the room. There is nobody else. I've got to step up and do this. You ever been in a messy situation where you looked around and you looked for an adult to fix it and you realize you're the adult that has to fix it? I remember when my twins were really little, and one night after we fed them dinner, we got them out of the high chair. And because we had twins, my wife took one of them, and I took the other one. And my wife takes the first twin in another room, and I pick up the second twin. And when I take a step in the kitchen, I hear splat. And I look down, and out of the back of this diaper is just overflowing with stuff. You know what I'm talking about. And it's gushing out and splatting on the floor. And so I just scream, Monica, what do I do? And she had the bright idea to run into the kitchen. She left one twin alone for a few seconds. She runs into the kitchen and she grabs a Walmart plastic bag and she wraps it around the feet of the twin that I'm holding. And so there I am holding a twin in a Walmart plastic bag, and the bag starts to fill up. I'm like, what do I do? She says, you got to give him or her a bath. I'm not going to say which twin it was. And so I run up the stairs holding this twin in a Walmart plastic bag, and I get to the master bedroom, and for some reason, the master bedroom door was closed. And in order to get to the bathroom, I had to open the door, and I had no hands to open the door handle. And so I'm literally trying to use my knee as I'm trying not to squish the plastic bag because it's about to overflow with stuff. And it's one of those many moments as an adult where I'm like, where are the parents? Who's responsible here and who's going to help me? There is nobody else. I got to figure it out. So I used my elbow and I got the door open and I walked in and I had to figure out how to clean him and her. And I had to figure out, I had to figure it out. There was no lesson. There was no time to watch a YouTube video. I had to figure it out. I had to do the work. And if Next Level is your church, one of the ways that I hope you take this with you wherever you go. Whether you stay at Next Level forever or you're military and God ends up moving you on, I hope that wherever you go, whatever church you're a part of, you jump in from day one and say, all right, let's get busy. It's time to do the work. Wherever I go, that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump in. This is God's house. It's not my house, so I'm going to help prepare it. There's no one else. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to make sure someone else isn't carrying my load. I'm going to do the work. So those are 4 observations that we can take with us this week. And I want to recap them again. And I want to ask you to spend some time looking over them as we prepare for the final week of this series. How to prepare a heart for the house. Number 1, prepare by understanding the vision. Number 2, prepare for the next generation. Number 3, prepare by seeking God. And number 4, prepare by doing the work. Do the work. Would you pray with me with every head bowed and every eye closed? If you're here today and you've never asked Jesus to become a part of your life, what I want to make sure you understand is we don't want anything from you. We want something for you. And we don't want you to feel pressure to be a part of this thing until you know that God has saved you and you have a relationship with Him. So if you're here today and you want to start that relationship and you're ready to do that, I want to pray and I want to ask if you're ready to become a Christian that you just repeat this prayer after me quietly in your heart. Would you just repeat with me? God, I admit that I'm a sinner. I admit that I have fallen so short of your standards. And I ask that you would forgive me of my sins, that you would wash me white as snow, and that you'd help me to live for you all the days of my life. With every head still bowed and every eye closed, if you said that prayer, your next step is to let us know. We don't want to do this in a way that embarrasses you. We just want to help you understand what you committed to and what it means to be a Christian. And so if you said that prayer, would you be so bold and just raise your hand up? And one of our ushers is going to hand you a card. We just ask that you fill that out, give it back to us. We'll give you a call this week. But if you said that prayer with me, just keep your hand up, raise your hand up high so our ushers can see it. Keep it up high enough so they can see it. For everyone else, I just want to pray over us. God, I just ask right now that you would help us to be a church that prepares your house. God, that we would care about the next generation. That we would do our part to fulfill the vision that you've given us. God, help us to be people who hold loosely to our own plans but want to follow your plans. And help us to have a heart that wants to do the work. And I can't wait to see how you're going to use us to not just change us right now, but you're going to use us to change the world, to change the 757, and to change the next generation. And I thank you that you're going to use us. I ask that you would move in incredible ways in our hearts and our minds. In Jesus' name, amen.